Welcome to We Chat Divorce, hosted by Karen Chellew, Legal Liaison, and Catherine Shanahan, CDFA. Each episode, we sit down with divorce professionals and industry experts to provide insights and frank discussions about real people, real situations, and real divorce to help you achieve your best life post-divorce. This episode of We Chat Divorce is brought to you by My Divorce Solution, offering divorce financial planning so clients can secure the divorce settlement they deserve. Visit mydivorcesolution.com to request access.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to We Chat Divorce, where we break down the messy, emotional, and often confusing parts of divorce to help you make smart, informed decisions every step of the way. I'm Karen Chellew, Legal Liaison and co-founder of My Divorce Solution.
And I'm Catherine Shanahan, Divorce Financial Specialist and CDFA, co-founder of My Divorce Solution as well. We are here to give you the clarity you need so that you can take control of your divorce, especially when it comes to your money and your future.
So someone tells you to move money out of a joint account. You're thinking about divorce, you're in the middle of litigation. Someone else tells you to stop depositing your paycheck into that account. An attorney raises the possibility of temporary orders. An accountant mentions a tax concern. Each recommendation may sound reasonable on its own, but divorce decisions rarely stand alone. Moving money may affect household cash flow. Redirecting a paycheck may affect how the mortgage and other expenses get paid. Temporary orders may provide needed structure, but they may also require decisions before the full financial picture is understood. So the problem here is not necessarily the advice. The problem is making major decisions based on one conversation, one area of expertise, or one piece of information before anyone has stepped back to see the complete picture.
Karen, when you say the problem is not necessarily the advice, it also depends on who's giving you that advice, if it's the problem or not.
It's so true. And, I think anyone in a challenging situation, you tend to poll people, right? You tend to ask for feedback. And then all of it converges into one pot. And then what do you do? And oftentimes people make misinformed decisions because of that. That's what we're going to talk about today. Divorce is one of the few major financial transitions where you may be receiving advice from several people at once. Your attorney may be focused on legal strategy. Again, your accountant may be focused on taxes. And your friend, they just want the best for you. Each of these perspectives can be very valuable, but each one is also limited to its own point of view, as we were just saying. So before any of these recommendations can be evaluated properly, it really helps to understand your own marital estate and household cash flow. What do you own? What do you owe? What income is coming in? And what information has actually been verified versus what you believe is true?
It's so true, because professionals and friends, both of them, they limit their advice to their own experience or their expertise, right? Yesterday, I was on a call with a client with the financial planner who is, well, actually, it was the assistant to the financial planner, because our client was asked to sign a couple of documents. We couldn't review the documents, so I was asking her what the documents were. And one of them was they're trying to transfer the account into the two individual names instead of a joint account. And that's because they both need to access money. And so I asked a few questions, and it's a non-retirement account. And so if wife agrees to transfer her share, she's responsible for the taxes when she liquidates that, which would be normal in an agreement if you're both agreeing to take half of the account. My problem with it is that there is no overall agreement yet. I have no idea. I haven't even looked at everything yet. So how do we know that she actually will be responsible for that if she transfers it into her own name? Not responsible, but how do we know that she even wants that asset? And if she didn't want that asset, if she was, let's just say, using that money to buy him out of the marital home, or there was another asset that she was going to keep with ease, or there's a number of reasons that she would not keep that asset. Well, now she just did a one-off agreement to keep that asset.
Yeah. And I know in that particular situation, Catherine, this happened before we were involved, but her attorney was trying to help her find ways to pay the legal fees. So, right. So that was the premise of that negotiation, not necessarily, to your point, the overall picture, but she had a bill to pay. How are we going to pay the bill? And that was the solution in isolation.
From the brokerage firm said, well, you know what? This is just what the attorneys told me to do. This is what spouse told me to do. I have no idea what the overall agreement is. And that's my point. Listen, I love CDFAs. I am one of them, right? But a lot of times they don't know the overall negotiation that's happening. They're hired to do one-off tasks or to show an evaluation of something in particular. But how does that relate to your overall negotiation?
Yeah. And every transaction made in isolation can have incredible impact that you can't even anticipate. Selling a home, splitting the proceeds, taking half the money out of an account without projecting all the domino effect of that can really have impact that you cannot undo. So with that in mind, we're going to talk about 3 common situations that often call for a broader financial view. One note before we begin here. If there's abuse, danger, coercive control, or an immediate financial emergency, taking protective action and getting appropriate professional help comes first, always, without question. So what follows applies to the more common situations that feel urgent, but usually allow time for a closer look. So the first situation is moving money out of a joint account. I referenced that briefly just a minute ago. Someone may suggest doing this to make sure you have access to funds. And depending on the circumstances, that concern can be legitimate. But before acting, it helps to know what expenses are currently paid from that account. Is the mortgage withdrawn automatically? What about insurance, tuition, or credit cards? Moving money without answering those questions and all the other questions that go along with that can create an immediate cash flow problem. And it may also need to be disclosed later. And again, you can't undo what you've already done. And so credibility comes into question there. The real question is not simply whether you can move the money. It is what the legal, financial, and practical consequences of moving it would be in your specific situation.
Here's another real life situation with a client of ours that just happened this week as well. She urgently needed to speak to me because of something that she was told. So we get on the phone call, and her coach told her that she should not have any joint accounts with her spouse because the spouse could liquidate the whole account. And then what would happen to her? So I said, well, let's talk about that a little bit. Your spouse, is he still depositing his paychecks? Yes. Are you depositing yours? Yes. Are his paychecks larger than yours? Yes. Are the household bills being paid out of that account? Yes. The mortgage, utilities, everything? Yes. Okay. So now you want to go separate. You were just given the advice to go separate. So now you're going to go open your own account, deposit your paycheck into your account, and he will continue to deposit his into whatever account he wants. How do you know he'll even pay the mortgage and expenses then? How will you pay it? She doesn't even want to go to an attorney. She's hoping to settle with him outside of going through the legal process. So if she would have listened and went and withdrew her name off that account, not her name off the account, but if she would have opened her new account and started paying her paychecks in that new account, and he would do the same, she would have been basically shit out of luck because he would have said, too bad, I'm keeping this separate money now. I'm not sharing it. Figure out a way to pay until you get a support order.
Yeah. That's when money starts moving from accounts all over the place. Yeah.
Exactly.
I had a client or a brand new client tell me that before hiring us, she had gone to an attorney consult and was concerned about cash flow, just like you're saying here. And she said the attorney told her to start putting her paycheck, she was the wage earner, into a separate account. And without discussing it with her spouse at all, they were separated. And immediately he withdrew 65% of their cash. And she's really having a money crunch issue now. So, hindsight's 2020, but she says she wished she had thought it through for sure.
And it makes sense. You want to have your own account, and sometimes you have to. Let's just say your incomes are the same. There are circumstances that it could work out that you should have your own account, but you really need to know the impact of that. Not every professional knows the whole financial picture of your marital estate, especially a coach, right? So they're listening to your emotions, and maybe the coach was right by what our client was saying to her about how she thinks the husband's going to take all the money, and you don't know the narrative that they're explaining.
Right.
So maybe a coach is correct by saying that in some circumstances, but there's numerous times that this happens, that you're instructed to do something with your finances that you are just doing too prematurely.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we try to find ways to communicate that transaction either through counsel, through the mediator, through the coaches, or directly in some form or fashion, when those transactions, and to your point, Catherine, sometimes it just can't be done. But our whole point here today is don't make decisions in a vacuum.
And if you're worried that your spouse is going to take out the money, just make sure you have a statement or a balance of a certain time. Because if it could be considered an advanced equitable distribution, it doesn't mean that you are not going to get your marital portion of that.
Mhm.
So it's better off to get documents showing values at different points in time, any kind of document that will show a value, and that will help you get clear and prepared.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that is the MDS approach for sure. So the second situation is redirecting a paycheck into a new individual account. We've already touched on that a little bit. That step, as we said, may eventually make sense, but household cash flow still matters in the short term for so many reasons. Who is currently paying the mortgage, the utilities, the groceries? We covered that. So redirecting income without understanding the household budget can create instability at a time when both spouses are already uncertain about money. Separate banking is often a reasonable eventual goal. And in different states, it matters when that community or marital property is going to be severed. Sometimes it's at date of separation, sometimes it's at date of divorce, and sometimes it's an agreed date. Whatever it is, you should be acutely aware of that. So to Catherine's point, when you're reconciling or looking for reimbursement claims or validating the transactions that you made in those various periods, you have the supporting documentation for that. So, like I said, the transition to it should be evaluated and coordinated, not treated as an isolated decision made in reaction to a single piece of advice.
And in divorce, we have maintenance, support, alimony, whatever your state calls it, and then we have asset and debt division. So a lot of times when people take this knee-jerk reaction to redirecting a paycheck, and it messes up the cash flow stability of your family, you really make everything else more difficult, right? Because cash flow is an everyday occurrence that make people panic. Assets and debts typically stay where they are, but the cash flow part is the scary part, because both parties, if there's a paying party, they're scared, because what do they have to pay for the next 10 years, 5 years, whatever the duration would be. So that's a scary feeling. The receiving party is scared because, oh my gosh, what will happen when that time period, that duration ends? And what if the paying party doesn't pay it? And how will I live my life? So just imagine you start redirecting a paycheck. The fear then is heightened, because now it's immediate. And so you do all these knee-jerk reactions to and that's when people want to say, oh, go take half the savings account to protect yourself. So can you see how it's just a trickle down effect? So really, in the beginning, I know some people don't have control over the cash flow and their spouse is controlling it all. But it's a time to ask really good questions. And that's what our process does as well. Ask questions, and sometimes to your spouse in an email or a text if you're not communicating with them, or through your attorneys if you have to do it that way. Because transparency is really our big motivator here. the more transparent we all are, the better off we are for negotiating in the long run. So just be careful before you make that redirection of any paycheck or taking any assets out.
So I remember in my very specific situation many years ago, I needed the money in our savings account to set up an apartment. I had to leave the marital home, and it was very difficult. But I remember distinctly the day when I made the call to say, I'm taking half the money of the savings account. I've got to set it up. He was beyond pissed, of course. Like I knew that he was going to be. But that phone call made a difference, because otherwise all kinds of court motions could be sent out against me, like all kinds of things could have happened. So that week or so of his being enraged with me until his attorney calmed him down was worth it in the long run. So, so many people say, oh, my spouse is going to be so angry, but there is a way to approach it in a way that over the long term benefits you both.
Well, I mean, Karen, you bring up a really good point here, and it's something that I truly believe. Your spouse is going to be angry no matter how you look at it. There is not one spouse that I have met that says, oh my gosh, I can't wait to pay support. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited I'm paying my spouse alimony. Or a spouse that says, oh, I'm so happy I'll have half of the bank account instead of the whole bank account that I saved the last 5 years for. No one is happy. But in that scenario, yes, they're angry, but imagine how much angrier they are when you blindside them by removing funds.
Mm-hmm.
So what type of anger do we want? Do we want the blindsided anger, or we just want the anger that, sure, it's a reality check anger? So
Right.
again, I'm not talking about people who are in abusive relationships where you get physically abused. I'm talking about most people out there. So you have to sometimes give someone a heads up so that it is an easier path for you to move forward. Not easy, but maybe a little easier.
Yeah.
And you didn't do anything wrong, which is why his attorney was able to settle him down, because he got another reality check from the attorney. But I like giving a heads up. And if they don't act the way that you want them to, then they're not going to be blindsided if you need to use the court system to get something.
Right. Your integrity remains intact. And again, like we're going to reiterate this, you don't always have that option. We 100% get that. But when you do have the option, most of the time, it's a better path to take. So the third situation that we're going to talk about today is deciding whether to move forward with temporary orders. Temporary orders can address support, housing, or parenting arrangements while a divorce is pending. And in some cases, that structure becomes very necessary. But that decision always deserves a close look. Do you understand all the sources of income, including bonuses and commissions? Do you understand the household expenses well enough to know whether the proposed temporary arrangement would actually be financially sustainable? Temporary orders are not final decisions, but they often shape the expectations and financial patterns that follow. So that decision should combine legal guidance, of course, with organized financial information and your confidence in knowing what your cash flow is, rather than resting on either one alone.
Yeah, this is a tough one for a lot of people, because I sometimes get stumped myself. Do you go for temporary orders to get a support payment? Do you realize that maybe you won't get or have the freedom to spend the way you were spending now? Will it affect you that way? Or will you have more freedom because you'll get more than you actually spend? A lot of times people will say, well, I can't believe my spouse didn't go for temporary orders. And we do the calculations because they would be paying more than they're paying now.
Mm-hmm.
So why would they?
Yeah.
They've already been instructed. Why start paying APL, alimony pending litigation, or go through temporary orders, because you're going to end up paying your spouse more. And it backfires the other way too. Maybe maybe your spouse is paying more because it's just easier now to keep the household running the way it was. So if you go for temporary orders, will you be living on a stricter budget, right?
Yeah. And it's all, to your point, it's all relative to your state, how your state looks at it. And, some people are shocked when we ask them about temporary alimony pendente lite decisions, and they'll say, well, my attorney never brought it up. Well, sometimes your attorney's not going to bring it up if you seem comfortable. Why would they throw that in the ring if you and your spouse are coordinating that? They're going to address that situation when you bring it up and you feel that, maybe a precedence is being set that you need less than what you actually need. That's the whole point of temporary orders. And they do really play a role in the final orders as well. So understanding how that works is very, very important.
Right. And when you're financially organized with the information, then your counsel can give you the strategy legally, right? So you can't just go in there saying, oh, I want this, I want that. You really need to be financially organized so that you're making a smart decision and you're not going to be blindsided again by the decision that's made if you go for a temporary order.
Yeah, so true. And going through the exercise of knowing what you need is so important. Most people are shocked at how the courts look at your cash flow and expenses. And we've addressed that on other podcasts, but it really is a mindset change.
Mm-hmm.
So the takeaway from today's conversation is simple, believe it or not. Do not make a major divorce decision based on one conversation, one professional's limited view, or someone else's divorce experience. Your marital estate is interconnected, just like everyone's. A decision about the house affects cash flow. Cash flow affects support. Taxes affect what an asset is actually worth. Before making a major financial decision during divorce, start by understanding what you own, what you owe, and what income is available, and what information has actually been verified. Then bring it to the professionals who can help. Understand how their recommendation fits into that larger picture.
And I'm going to read 4 takeaway thoughts to you that I think are really good. Good decisions are supported by coordinated information, not isolated answers. Number 2, ask whether additional financial information could change a recommendation. Number 3, ask how one proposed action might affect the rest of the marital estate. And number 4, you do not need to solve the entire divorce in one day. Understand the next decision and how it connects to everything else.
Thank you for joining us today on We Chat Divorce. If this episode gave you clarity or a new question to consider, please pass it along to someone who needs to hear it.
And if you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a comment wherever you're listening. Every share helps us reach more people searching for honest, financial, grounded answers.
Learn more about us at mydivorcesolution.com.
Until next time, remember that clarity is power. Make your decisions with confidence, with verified information, and with the right people in your corner.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of We Chat Divorce. We hope this episode was informative and supportive on your divorce journey. If you're looking for more support for navigating divorce with confidence and clarity, head over to mydivorcesolution.com for more podcast episodes, divorce events, and resources for your divorce. We'll see you back here for our next episode.